Greetings, lovely people, and welcome to Fast Track 4s. Today we're going to be talking about episode 1 of season 1 of Hawkeye, Never Meet Your Heroes. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way. This is not a review, this is just a thoughts. I've literally just watched the episode. I'm going to be reviewing the entire series once it's completely out, and I'm also going to be doing later this week the second episode because they both dropped on the same day. But in any case, spoilers ahead for episode 1. And, roll that intro. Okay, so this episode was interesting. I was really excited for this. Hawkeye, I'm not even being sarcastic or anything. Hawkeye is my favourite Avenger by a large margin. He was since Avengers. He was really in 4. To be fair, I really liked, even though it was only a short appearance, I did actually like him in 4. And generally, when it comes to MCU characters, there's very few that I care more about than Hawkeye. And yeah, I'm not disappointed in this. And yeah, I definitely do have some issues, but I don't think they're really issues necessarily that matter. There's a few little minor acting things and a few pacing things I just think are a little bit off, but I'll get into that. Generally, this episode is amazing. So, we start off with a return to 2012, the Battle of New York, from Kate Bishop's perspective. The Disney Plus shows, I have to hand it to them, have been doing an amazing job with just giving us snippets of various points within the MCU timeline that we just haven't really seen. Obviously, in WandaVision, we got to see the blip, the end of that, where people started appearing again, which was something that is really interesting to see, that was unlikely to appear in a movie. And with this, we're getting to see some of the Battle of New York from different perspectives, and I loved that in Homecoming when we got to see the aftermath. It's really cool to see in a civilian perspective of the Battle of New York, and there is a little bit, as I've got little bits of gripes. The child acting, it was fine. It was, a lot better than you usually see. Still wasn't great. There was some kind of annoying kid acting from the kid playing Kate Bishop as a child. And, I don't know. It's personal preference. I'm sure some people will watch it and be like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. I just personally thought it was a little bit, I don't know, whiny, maybe. I don't know. That's nothing against the actress. I just thought it was a little bit whiny, but I don't like kid actors, just generally. But yeah, otherwise, the effects look amazing. We got to see some alternate views of the Hawkeye scenes from the main battle, so when he's shooting things from top of a rooftop and then he jumps off. We get to see an extended version of that, a few different angles. It's really cool. And yeah, it introduces our main character, Kate Bishop, who, as I'm sure most people know, is Hawkeye in the current run of comics, a new Avenger, and I quite like the setup for this character. Her, father dies, her mother is not the one that's closer with her, she's always closer to her father, and when her father dies, it's just those two against the world. It's a very interesting origin story of the fact that, she's born into a rich family, she's known nothing but wealth her entire life. The only tragic thing we know of currently to have happened to her in her life is her father dying, which is, that is a superhero origin right there, just of a parent dying. But it seems like she's had a pretty good life. She's been able to do whatever she wants. In the title sequence, the intro sequence, we see that she is essentially able to do anything in terms of martial arts and gymnastics, and of course she's a marksman, she's a pro archer, and generally it's just really interesting to see that such a quick origin as well, because we normally have entire movies dedicated to the origins of certain characters. As I say, Disney Plus, another thing that they've been doing real well with the different shows is introducing new characters and giving their origins very quickly. And sure, it's a little bit different with Monica Rambeau because of the fact that we already had met her in Captain Marvel, but her entire superhero origin is in one episode in like a 5-minute section, which I just think is really interesting. And it's kind of the same thing with this. We see her entire origin in one intro, cold open followed by an intro sequence, and I thought that was really good. Then we get on to what Barton's doing, what Clint's doing, and honestly, it's really fun. He's with his kids, and they're watching Rogers the Musical, which is an Avengers musical, I assume. It's probably supposed to be based around Captain America's life specifically, hence the name Rogers, and there's some really funny things with that. I was expecting it to be very cringy, very purposely cringy, but just not really something that I'd want to ever, think about again. But honestly, I kind of want Rogers the Musical to be a thing now. It the lyrics in the songs were just kind of dumb fun, and all the onstage actors playing the characters and stuff. There was even a really good joke around the fact that for some reason in this musical Ant-Man's there, which obviously isn't accurate, and there's a very good joke from Clint himself being like, that guy wasn't even there. I quite like that. That was a really fun moment. They end up leaving early and going to get food, and this is the point where we start to realise Clint is really struggling with his superhero identity sort of thing, because obviously in the MCU pretty much every single hero is recognisable out of costume, and that is very obvious with Hawkeye. He shows his entire face, he doesn't even wear a mask. So a lot of people are coming up to him, asking him for selfies, asking him for various different things, and offering him free food because he saved the city and stuff like that. People are celebrating him, but it clearly is weighing on him because of his time as Ronin during the blip. And I think that's a really interesting way of going about it. I will say one thing about Barton, and I know it is explained in the comics, so I'm not really gonna complain about it too much. We don't really get, and this might happen later in the series, we don't get a reason why he has his hearing aid. Presumably, if I was to be honest, I'm guessing that it's in the explosion at the Avengers facility, it damages hearing, because he was the only non-armored regular human in that room when it blew up. Even Ant-Man, he has his full helmet and everything. So it's I think that's probably the way they're going around it, where it's yeah, the explosion, it didn't really affect him within the fight, but it was prolonged damage that's taken hold, and now he needs a hearing aid. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to have some variation to the character. It gives him a bit more of an identity beyond just the guy that shoots out. He's a bit more than just a Robin Hood, and quite honestly, he has been, since Age of Ultron, he has been way more than just a Robin Hood. I don't know. I quite like the idea of having him, need a hearing aid. He's kind of impaired, but I just wish that they'd given just a side note, just a random line, just maybe even from Barton, just saying, oh, I haven't been able to, I haven't had my hearing's been messed up since the battle against Thanos, or whatever, something just offhand remark, just to fill in the gaps. And as I say, that might happen later in the series, we don't know yet. But yeah, that's once again, it's just one of my minor gripes, and it didn't take away from it. It's something that I wish had happened a little bit differently, and yeah, it's still very good. We then follow Kate as she first off uses a trick arrow to accidentally, I will add, destroy a clock tower, or a bell tower, bell tower. They're the same. It's both. And yeah, then we don't really see the direct result of that. But her mum does end up taking away her credit card or whatever, as well as having to pay for the damages. Which, it's nice to see that there is actual repercussions for this kind of stuff. Though it currently in episode 1 isn't felt too heavily. So, I don't know, it's very much one of those things that can and probably will take effect throughout the series, especially with the fact that her credit card or whatever has been taken away from her. She doesn't have funds currently. But yeah, it's something that then leads to her coming back home to New York, and her mum is getting engaged to her boyfriend or fiancé at that point. And We don't really know the relationship between Jack and Kate Bishop, but we assume that it's not a great relationship, or she just doesn't really know him very well to be, like, accepting of such a quick engagement sort of thing. And, that's some character tensions. We like to see it, and that all leads into a charity auction, which I'm not going to go into too much detail with it all because it's kind of a boring section, but it is more character development, which I can't complain about. And that works out with a underground auction, which a rich man that Kate Bishop has been talking with earlier in the scene, and Jack having a bidding war essentially over the Ronin sword that we saw in Endgame. And it's really interesting. Jack doesn't win it, but then when the bros, I can't remember what is it the Tracksuit Mafia, I believe it's called. They haven't actually been named in the show yet, but I believe that's what they are in the comic. But yeah, they break in trying to find a watch. It's a lot of Avengers stuff is in the auction, from the Avengers compound, and one of these things is a watch for whatever reason that the Tracksuit Mafia want. And in the confusion, Jack ends up stealing the sword, the Ronin sword. I should probably be more specific, and that also leads to the Ronin suit being taken by Kate Bishop, and she beats up the bros, which is very fun. It's a very fun scene, and quite honestly, it is actually one of the better, ignoring Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi cannot be touched in terms of martial arts, it is one of the better martial arts scenes in Marvel. I will say it right now. I haven't watched much of Daredevil, and I haven't watched any of the other Netflix shows, so I'm sure there's some better martial arts, or at least I'd hope there would be, with those characters in those shows. But honestly, especially for a first episode of just showing, her capabilities, I thought it was a really good action scene, and, it really showed her skill set. I'll give it that much. That then leads to Kate Bishop adopting Lucky the pizza dog, who is a character, once again a dog, should I say, from the comic, and hasn't been named yet, but presumably will be called Lucky because that's the name of the comic. And it's all fun. Kate ends up going and trying to talk to or find information about the rich guy that was trying to bid on the sword, and finds him dead. And then it essentially ends with the long and short of it is she's attacked by the Tracksuit Mafia. It kind of gets out of the way of them, but she's still in trouble. Then Clint comes, saves her life, unmasks her, and that is the end of the episode. And it seems really quick. Obviously, the episode is 45 minutes, so it's not exactly a short episode. It sounds like there's not much based on my description. But honestly, I thought it was a good amount of time. We got a lot of character development, a lot of setup, which I'm sure will be paid off, which, coming out of watching Doctor Who Season 13, Series 13, whichever, it's nice that we've already got, I've watched just the first episode, even though the second episode is out. I'm already, having ideas about where it could go, but at the same time, this single episode, I think, could be a setup for any number of things. It works on its own. It's its own self-contained world. It doesn't require you to continue. You now know this character. When she appears in a new Avengers film or whatever, you'll know who she is. You'll know the relationship she has with Barton, even if it's only vague. And you have an idea of who the villains could be that she would be facing. And yeah, I quite like it. As their first episode as a pilot for a series, I think it's really good. And that's really all I can say. I really enjoyed this. I don't have any major takeaways. I do wish that the Underground Auction had been held by Kingpin, like it was in the comic. But at the same time, I understand that they're trying to avoid characters like Kingpin from the Netflix shows. It makes sense that they're going to wait on that just because they need to fully, decide whether they're going to be using the Netflix stuff or not. Hopefully, with No Way Home, we are going to see some of those things, with Daredevil apparently appearing in that film. But right now, not knowing any of that information, it would have been nice to see Kingpin. We didn't. I'm not upset. it's just once again, it's just one of the things where I wish it had happened. It didn't. It's whatever. But yeah, this was an amazing episode. I'm literally, as soon as I've finished making this video, I am going to be I'm going to be watching the next episode and then probably making a video on that too. But in any case, that's going to be it for this Fast Tracks episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like it, subscribe if you're around here, and ring that bell so you never miss an upload. Otherwise, I'll see you later this week for the second episode of Hawkeye, as well as per usual, the next episode of Doctor Who Flux. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.
It's been a long week. I feel like I could use a vacation. I can hardly think. It's like the worst song you've ever heard on every station.